welcome back to Octagon Opinions. On today's today's video, what we're going to be discussing is making predictions for the UFC 328 Chimaev and Strickland card. We will start with the main event and the main card, and then we'll obviously move down through the prelims, and then we will end the video on the early prelims. Just for entertainment's sake, really. But yeah, so let's suppose we can just get into it now with the main event, obviously being Sean Strickland and Hamza Chimaev. Now this, I mean, obviously, I think you're not a real UFC fan, you're not a real fight fan if you're not looking forward to this fight. I mean, you look at this fight, you look at the two guys, how they are, how they have been in past press conferences. Obviously Chimaev, when he was fighting Gilbert Burns, he's slamming the microphone on the table. He's full of energy, full of chaos. Really, just really bringing the entertainment value, I suppose, to the fights. Strickland as well, as we know, remember the press conferences with Izzy. Some of the stuff with DDP, when DDP was talking about Strickland's upbringing and his childhood, and Strickland started crying and stuff. I mean, these guys are, they're battling it out for the most emotional fighter, I'd say, in the entire roster, really. And it is kind of, I mean, people say that Ian Gary v Makhachev is like the new version of McGregor and Habib, right? But I don't think it is. I actually think that Strickland and Chimaev are actually the new McGregor Khabib, because I mean, Chimaev, Khabib, they're similar region, similar kind of guys, and then Strickland, much like McGregor, he's just all talk. He's always on the microphone, he's always giving it large on the mic, and he will, say anything. We saw this week in I think, what was it? It was one of the headlines. Strickland said that he was going to shoot Chimaev or something. I mean, these two, we're getting actual threats to life between these two, and I'm not here to criticize it. I think it's a good thing for the UFC to finally be getting back to real proper rivalries between fighters, especially when there's a championship on the line as well. But yeah, so the build up to this fight, I think, is going to be absolutely peak UFC. I think this is gonna, be generational, right? It's going to be feeding families, with the lead up of this fight. But about the fight itself, I don't think there's going to be much in it. I think what we're going to see is Hamzat, potentially. I mean, I don't even know if Hamzat would really be trying to prove a point in this fight. I don't know if he sees Strickland as a worthy opponent to even show off his stand-up. I think realistically what we're going to see is Hamzat just going in and shooting for a takedown early on. I think we're going to see the first two rounds. We're going to see Strickland getting backed up to the cage and getting grappled, getting taken down. Obviously, Strickland has got, little to no ground game. His takedown defense hasn't really. I mean, if we're being realistic, his takedown defense has never been tested by a guy like Hamzat, by a guy with Hamzat's skill set. So, anybody talking about, Hernandez or any of his past fights and stuff, it's nowhere, like, there's no one who comes close to Hamzat's skill level when it comes to wrestling and stuff. So I think we'll see Hamzat submitting Sean Strickland either in the first or second round. I'm giving Strickland a lot of leeway there with potentially he might make it to the second round, but realistically I think we're going to see him getting submitted, or we'll see him getting blobbed the same way that DDP did. But yeah, just really, really good build up. Probably going to be a shit fight, unless Hamzat goes for a submission, which we didn't see him do in the DDP fight, which I'll be honest, I was pretty frustrated with. After the third round, you kind of just, looking at the TV, shouting at him, just telling him to, just submit the guy already. Similar to the Makhachev and JDM fight, sometimes it is just annoying when a guy has got such an advantage on the ground and he just doesn't use it to get a submission win. But either way, I think the build up to this fight will be. I think it will probably make up for the fact that the fight might not be that good on its own. Um, but yeah, so I think we'll see Hamza just shooting in, getting early takedowns. We might see Strickland, he might manage to defend one or two, but I think realistically he'll get taken down very quickly, and I think Hamzat will try and submit him, and he might actually genuinely try and kill him. So that is, yeah, very much looking forward to that, as I'm sure everybody is. We move on to the co-main event of Joshua Van. Um, he's now defending his belt for the first time against Tatsuro Taira. Now for this one, I think this one's a pretty tricky one to be fair. I think obviously Joshua Van winning the title in the way that he did against Pantoja, um, I mean it's a bad way to win a title, and I think even he probably feels that way. But I think if we're being realistic, I don't know if Joshua Van's at the level yet to really be a champion, and to be able to defend it against a contender like Tyra, who actually in his last fight we saw him knocking out Brandon Moreno in the second round. So Tyra, he's no scrub. He's no scrub in the flyweight division. Um, so I think we'll see Joshua Van. I don't know if we'll see him struggle, but I think we will see. I think we'll see a pretty close fight. I think it will be a close fight. I could see maybe a round three or four um, potential finish from either guys. I think Joshua Van, obviously very combination heavy with his boxing. He's very good at mixing the kicks as well. Obviously Tyra as well put on a really good performance against Brandon Moreno in his last fight. Um, so I think we'll see a lot of striking in this fight, and I'm obviously very happy with that. But yeah, if if I'm if I'm gonna predict the fight, I think prediction wise, I'll probably put it to. I think I'll give it to Tyra via decision. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Tatsuro Taira winning this fight by decision. I think both of them are probably good enough that they can defend well enough on the feet, and I think we'll see both of them kind of getting good strikes in on each other. But also, I think they're both good enough at defending strikes that we won't necessarily see, a knockout or a finish in that kind of way. Um, Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we do get a good finish. But I think prediction wise, I'll probably give it to a decision for Tatsuro Taira. And also I think Joshua Van, I think if he does lose this fight, I don't think it will be that long before he, fights for the title again. Um, and I think he'll probably be in title conversations obviously for years to come. So yeah, but that's my prediction for the co-main event there. We move on now to this heavyweight bout between Alexander Volkov and Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now, let's just get their names. Now, this fight is, this is potentially, you know, this is, I think this is going to be a really, really good heavyweight fight. Obviously, we've got Alexander Volkov coming off his win against the terrorist Jailton Almeida, who thankfully was cut from the UFC after that, horrific performance he put in, where he just blob maxed Alexander Volkov for the whole fight, and just seemed to hope that that would get him the win. Obviously, I think the UFC are now moving towards kind of punishing those kind of fighters. I think in the last fight night at Perth, we saw a lot of the referees, standing up guys who were on the ground and not necessarily progressing. Oh, pardon me. Um, but yeah, so I think in this fight, it will be, on the feet, trading strikes, and if it is that, I think we're going to see Waldo Cortez Acosta absolutely sleeping Alexander Volkov. Um, I think, we obviously saw him against Derek Lewis, um, getting that round two knockout TKO. So the guy's, he's got hands, and we've seen him coming up now. He's on a three-fight winning streak, and yeah, I think he's just gonna. I think Acosta's gonna be too much for Volkov, and Volkov, if we're being honest, he's washed. He's been in the heavyweight division for time now, and I think I think the UFC really needs to just move him on now. And potentially he could retire if he does lose this fight. So, but yeah, prediction wise, I'm gonna go with Waldo Cortez Acosta knocking out Alexander Volkov in round. I'll give it round two. I'll say a round two knockout from Cortez Acosta. And yeah, potentially Volkov might retire. Moving on to welterweight bout between Sean Brady and Joaquin Buckley. Um, Now, both of these guys are coming off of losses. So, obviously, Joaquin Buckley coming off a loss against Kamaru Usman last July, was it? And then Sean Brady obviously coming off the loss against Michael Morales, where he got sparked out in the first round. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really think that that's a fair representation of Sean Brady. I think um, Michael Morales, he's a freak of nature, to be honest. He's an absolute freak in the welterweight division. And I'm not just talking about his antics outside the octagon. Um, but no, I think Sean Brady, the guy's also got really good grappling, wrestling. We saw actually a couple of fights ago for Joaquin Buckley, we saw him, stuffing the takedowns of Covington, who a lot of people consider to be one of the better wrestlers in the UFC as a whole, and not just the welterweight division. So I think it'll be really interesting to see if Sean Brady goes grapple and wrestle heavy, um, where we've seen Joaquin Buckley being able to defend takedowns from Covington, but we've also seen in the Kamaru Usman fight, Usman absolutely dominated Buckley. He dominated him on the feet, but also on the ground. He grappled with him very, very well from Usman. Unk still got it. Um, but yeah, I think, does Sean Brady have Usman's level of grappling and wrestling? I don't think so, at least not at this point. So if I'm making a prediction based off of the last couple of fights, I'm probably gonna go with, I don't know, I think this is a really tricky one because Joaquin Buckley, he's got really good hands, he's got really good skills on the feet. We saw in the Covington fight, he managed to do a lot of damage to Covington on the feet, and he also managed to do some damage, on the ground off of his back. Um, but Sean Brady, I mean, the Morales loss for Brady is I think it's really skewering, people's view for this fight. So I think I'll go with Sean Brady by decision. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Sean Brady by decision. Um, I think Joaquin Buckley doesn't have the kind of power, the kind of fear factor that Morales has. And I think Brady will be just good enough, on the feet wise to kind of, you know, get around Buckley's hands. And I think Brady will also be able to kind of grapple a wee bit with Buckley, and he might be able to win some of the rounds off of that. He might get a takedown or two. Um, but yeah, I just think after Buckley losing to Usman in the way that he did, I think, yeah, I'll go Sean Brady by decision. Ah, God, Nah, do you know what? Do you know what? Scrap that. Scrap that. Scrap that. What we're going to do is we're going to go Joaquin Buckley by KO TKO in round two, right? Sean Brady's chin got cracked by Morales. I think Joaquin Buckley's got the hands for it. Yeah, scrap the first one. We're going to go with Joaquin Buckley by KO TKO in round two. Um, right, that's quite a prediction there. But we move on. We move on now to again. an absolute unk-off between King Green, formerly known as Bobby Green, and Jeremy Stevens, who, I'll be honest, I completely forgot this guy was even in the UFC. He's obviously been, out and about doing all sorts of other organizations. He's been fighting for, bare knuckle, all this kind of stuff. Um, Losing, I think. I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, no, I think Bobby Green, Ken Green, whatever you want to call him, I think he's gonna get the job done. Jeremy Stevens, I just don't know how this guy is even. I don't know how he's still even in the UFC. I don't know why they haven't cut him yet. Who's still offering this guy contracts? Um, but yeah, regardless of that, prediction wise, I'm gonna go with King Green getting the KO TKO in round. Do you know what, I'm gonna go round one. I think Bobby Green, King Green. I think he does him horrifically in round one. Jeremy Stevens, obviously, he's on a three-fight losing streak within the UFC alone. Um, and that was from 2020 all the way up to 2025. So over 5 years he's only fought three times and lost all three. And his last loss was obviously against Mason Jones, who beat him by decision. But within that fight, we saw Mason Jones dominating Jeremy Stevens. So I think King Green, Bobby Green, I think he isn't that bad. He's not at Jeremy Stevens' level of bad just yet. So I'm gonna go with King Green getting the KO TKO in round one, I'd say. We move on to the prelims now with T-Bag Gautier coming up against Ozzy Diaz. Now for this one, I think for this one we have to be realistic. Obviously, Ozzy Diaz, he is coming off of a win, albeit a decision win against Jordan Santos, who is actually fighting earlier on this card, so we'll get to him later. Um, but he was outstruck in the first round and the second round, and he was actually even taken down in the third round. So looking at the stats wise, I'm kind of thinking, how did Ozzy Diaz actually win that fight against Santos? But it is what it is. Judges do what judges do. But in terms of this fight with Atiba Gautier, Gautier's on a three-fight winning streak. They are all tin cans. Um, but we saw in the last fight he had against Andrei Pulaev, um, it was a really weird looking fight. It was a really, really weird looking fight because Pulaev was keeping the distance as much as he could, and he was kind of just circling round, kind of just trying to get away from Gautier as much as he could, and then Gautier would close the distance, and he would then get into trade-offs with Pulaev, but he didn't ever really look like he was going to put him out. And I think if the UFC is trying to build him up as this middleweight prospect, this absolute boogeyman of the division, I don't know, man. I was really really unimpressed with his fight against Puliev, and I think what we'll see in this fight, I think we will actually see Gautier finally showing some genuine promise for future fights and for him being the prospect that the UFC want. They want everyone to think that he is. But in terms of predictions, I'm gonna go with Atiba Gautier getting this done by. Do you know what? I'm gonna go with round one KO, round one KO, TKO. Um, I think the power that Gautier has should be enough to finish Ozzy Diaz, and obviously with Ozzy Diaz being outstruck by Jordan Santos in his last fight in the first and second round, sorry. Um, I think I think Gautier, he just needs to really just put the pressure on, get him up against the fence, and just finish him there. Um, and yeah, I think that's what we will see in the first round, potentially the second round. I might give Ozzy Diaz, a bit of leeway there, but yeah, first or second round, KO TKO by Atiba Gautier. We move on to the next bout, being Joel Alvarez against Yaroslav Amosov. Now with this fight, um, we see that Yaroslav Amosov, he's coming off a win against Neil Magny, the absolute vet, crafty vet. Neil Magny lost a submission. Well, he lost by submission, I suppose, in the first round. So Yaroslav Amosov, he's got ground game. He's got a very good ground game. Neil Magny, he's no scrub. He may be, one of the biggest unks in the entire company, but he is no scrub. Um, and so for Amosov to submit him in the first round, that's pretty impressive, in my opinion. But then we also saw Joel Alvarez. He's now on a three-fight winning streak, with his most recent win obviously being against Vicente Luque, where he just beat the brakes off that guy. I remember watching that, and God, I didn't know what I was watching, man. It was horrible. It was horrible. But yeah, no, Joel Alvarez obviously just absolutely putting a beat down on Vicente Luque in his last win. Did take it to a decision though. He did take it to a decision, which is a bit, it's a bit concerning. Um, but in terms of this fight now, oh, this is a tricky one. This is a tricky one. I'll be honest. They're both roughly the same size. Both have got pretty decent records. I really don't know because Joel Alvarez, he's got really good hands. He's got really good stand up. Um, I think was there some times in the Vicente Luque fight he had him sort of on the ground, and Joel Alvarez also was in top position, top mount, and he was just hammering shots down. Um, but Yaroslav Amosov getting the submission over Neil Magny, that's a pretty impressive win. So I think I think my prediction for this is going to be Yaroslav Amosov getting a submission in round two or three. That will be my prediction for this fight. I think Joel Alvarez, I'm not sure he'll have the power to put Amosov out, and I think Amosov could get Alvarez down to the ground and could submit him in either the second or the third round. So yeah, that's my prediction for that fight. We move on to very weird looking, website here, um, that the UFC have. What the fuck? $7 billion company, by the way. $7 billion company, by the way. Um, Fuck knows what's going on there. Um, yeah, I suppose we'll just roll with it. This fight here is Grant Dawson versus Mateus Rebecki. Um, Now with this fight, I think I'm just gonna say the prediction just now. I think we'll see Rebecca knocking out Grant Dawson in round number two. Grant Dawson is actually coming off of a KO TKO loss to Manuel Torres, who did him in the first round. And it was a pretty, it was a pretty weird, knockout that he managed to get over Grant Dawson. Um, but he got it. He got it. So I will go with Grant Dawson losing by TKO KO, to Mateus Rebecki, who in his last fight against Ludwig Klein, they got fight of the night. It was an absolute banger. Both guys just went to war. It was a crazy fight. It was a crazy fight, and Rebecki obviously, he did lose. He did lose the fight, so we do need to take that into account. But it was a great fight, and his stand up and his striking looked pretty good. Um, and it looked a lot better than Grant Dawson's. Obviously, Grant Dawson being more of a kind of wrestler kind of guy. Um, but regardless, I think we'll see Rebecca knocking Grant Dawson out in round two. That will be the prediction for that fight. Moving on to the last prelim fight, or the first, depending on what you want. We have Jim Miller against Jared Gordon here. Now with this fight and these guys, it's I I don't know. I really don't know how to go with here, because Jim Miller, his last fight was a decision loss to Chase Hooper, the you know Chase Gooner Hooper, if that's what you want to call him. Chase Hooper, gun maxed his whole camp, um, but he beat Jim Miller by decision, which I mean, it's hardly something to brag about, but he did it, and it was a win, so good for Chase Hooper. And then Jared Gordon, he's coming off of a KO TKO loss to Rafa Garcia in the third round. Um, yeah, I have it here that round one was quite even on the feet, with Garcia getting a takedown. Round two, similar to round one, Garcia had a submission attempt, and then Garcia dominated the third round and scored the finish. Um, so both guys here coming off of a loss. Both guys are pretty, they're not very good. Um, I just, I'll be honest, I can't look past Jim Miller's age. Obviously, Jared Gordon, he's no spring chicken himself, but I think Jim Miller is too old now, and I think we will see Jared Gordon getting it done by decision. Um, that's my prediction for that fight. Um, yeah, Jim Miller might retire. I don't know. But yeah, that's my prediction for that fight. Decision win by Jared Gordon. We move pardon me, we move on to the early prelims of Roman Kopylov and Marco Tulio. Now this is a weird one because Marco Tulio he's coming off of a round two knockout TKO loss to Christian Leroy Duncan, who is actually ranked in the middleweight division. Um, but yeah, so he's coming off of a loss. Roman Kopylov, he's on a two-fight losing streak, with the first one coming against Paulo Costa and his most recent loss coming against Gregory Rodriguez. He lost by way of decision. Obviously he got outstruck on the feet in the first round. He did manage to land a takedown. Kind of similar story in round two. And then similar in the third round as well. But yeah, so in Gregor Rodriguez, I mean that's not a bad guy to lose to. Um, but Marco Tulio is the younger man, and I just Roman Kopylov. Every time that I've watched him, I don't know, man. I've just not been convinced. Um, I'm never convinced by this guy. Um, you know, in terms of him against just anyone who's relatively decent at striking. Um, so I think for that reason, I think I'm going to go Marco Tulio getting this done by. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say Marco Tulio getting this done by KO TKO in round two. Right, round two knockout TKO from Marco Tulio. Um, I also just want to see Roman Kopylov. I kind of want to see him get out. To be honest, I don't really like watching his fights. Anyway, we move on to Pat Sabatini and William Gomez. Um, Now this fight, obviously Pat Sabatini, he's currently on a two-fight win streak. His latest win was against Chepe Mariscal, however you want to say it, by way of decision. So he dominated the first round, and he managed to get two takedowns. He managed to get four takedowns in the second round and one takedown in the third round. So we will see what we're going to see is Pat Sabatini really trying to dominate on the ground and in the grappling against William Gomez. Now, William Gomez himself, he's coming off of a win against Robert Ruchala, again, however you want to say it, again by way of a decision. So he dominated Ruchala in the first round. He did get taken down though, so that definitely could be something that Sabatini goes after. But William Gomez himself managed to get two takedowns of his own in the third round while he dominated on the feet against Ruchala. So we've got both guys here who can obviously land takedowns. Pat Sabatini, I think, is probably the better of the two in wrestling. Gomez, I think, is probably the better striker. But I think from what we've seen in recent cards and on recent fights, I think we're seeing a lot of really grapple heavy fighters getting the wins and managing to get control time, Also, we saw Louis Sutherland and Taito Ivasa. I'm never going to stop talking about that fight. That was god awful. But again, like we saw how kind of control time can just, it can just build up over the whole fight. And I think I think that's what we've been seeing recently is guys who are really grapple heavy. Obviously, apart from Paddy Pimblett when he fought Gaethje, that was, I mean, again, it was a great fight, but that's obviously an exception. So yeah, I think prediction, it's going to be a decision, and if it goes to a decision, I'm going to give it to Pat Sabatini. I think he'll probably just take down Gomez. I think he'll take him down too much. I think anytime Gomez tries to get, something going on the feet, Pat Sabatini, he's got the takedowns. And yeah, I think it's going to be a decision win from Pat Sabatini. We move on to the second last or second first early prelim. Beisinger Susakayev versus Jordan Santos. Now, remember, we mentioned Jordan Santos a bit earlier. So Jordan Santos, he's coming off of a decision win against Danny Barlow, and it was a complete striking match. There was no taking downs, there was nothing like that. It was a pretty strike heavy match on the feet. Santos, I think, took the third round pretty decisively. Round 1 and 2 between him and Danny Barlow were, somewhat even. But yeah, he definitely took the third round pretty decisively, outstriking Danny Barlow, and yeah, he got the decision win. Susakayev, he's on a 2-fight win streak, and his latest win was came against Eric McConaughey by way of TKO in the third round. He did use takedowns in round 1, but then in rounds 2 and 3, he was primarily striking with McConaughey, and eventually obviously got the knockout in the third round. So I think this is going to be a pretty good fight overall. I think we'll see a lot of striking. We might see some groundwork from Susakayev maybe. But overall, I think this is going to be a really, really good fight to open up the card a wee bit. And prediction-wise, I'm going to go with Susakayev getting. I think I'll go with Susakayev getting the knockout in round 2. I think he can probably improve a wee bit on his last fight. And I think he'll probably have improved his striking as well since then. Yeah, I think Susakayev is going to get the knockout in round 2. And yeah, I think that's the prediction for that fight. And finally, we come to the first fight of the early prelims of the card as a whole. Clayton Carpenter coming up against Jose Ochoa. Ochoa, I don't know. But yeah, so Clayton Carpenter, he's currently on a 2-fight losing streak, and his latest loss has come from Theo by round 1 submission. Now this, it's a pretty bad way to lose round 1 submission. He was also outstruck on the feet, and then obviously got subbed on the ground. Jose Ochoa, though, he lost to Almabayev by decision. He was outstruck by Almabayev quite a lot on the feet, actually, and he got taken down 7 times. However, Ochoa did manage to get 2 submission attempts during that fight. So I think we're going to see Ochoa taking this fight. I think he'll take the win. I think he could potentially get, I don't know if I would say knockout, but I think he'll get a TKO. I think he'll probably get a finish. Their records are actually, well, almost the exact same. But either way, I think we'll see, they flyweight, so maybe, I don't know actually. Yeah, do you know what? We'll go with it. We'll go with round 1. Nah, I can't do that. No, we're not going to go with a knockout at flyweight. I just don't think that's going to happen. What I will go with though is I will go with a decision win for Jose Ochoa over Clayton Carpenter. Um, I think Jose Ochoa, I think he's probably got the better stand up out of the two of them. And obviously Carpenter getting submitted in the first round, I think that's probably going to weigh quite heavy on him coming into this fight. Um, but yeah, that's my prediction for that fight, and that's the end of the video. So hopefully you enjoyed. Um, hopefully, actually, if you've got any predictions yourself, leave them down in the comments below. Um, like, subscribe, do all that good shit, and yeah, we will see you in the next one.